Welcome to An Unconventional Life, a podcast where we share stories about the crazy 1% out there who earned their doctoral degrees and then went on to use them in crazy, cool, unique, and unconventional ways. Here's your host, astrophysicist turned teacher, author, dissertation coach, and more, Dr. Russell Strickland.
Hello and welcome to An Unconventional Life. I'm your host, Dr. Russell Strickland, the founder and CEO of Dissertation Done. And today I have with me Dr. Stefanie Boyer. Dr. Boyer is a professor of marketing at Bryant University and co-founder of Rainmakers, which is a virtual platform for training and assessing sales talent. She's done a TEDx talk and also is the recipient of the prestigious American Marketing Association Sales Educator of the Year Award. She co-authored the Little Black Book of Social Media, Strategies to Ignite Your Business, Influencer, and Professional Brand. And that's important for all of us. So we're going to talk about that. She's got a wonderful array of experiences we're going to get into here shortly. Firefighting, U.S. Customs Service, selling financial services. And that's all before she got her doctoral degree. So I'm sure some of you guys can relate to some of this. I want to welcome you, Dr. Boyer. Thanks for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here today.
Awesome. I'd like to let everybody know that today's episode is being brought to you by Dissertation Done. At Dissertation Done, we help adult doctoral students through the dissertation process. So if you know that you're going to have to complete your dissertation at some point, please reach out to us ahead of time. The best way to get the support and guidance that you need is to do it proactively. But if you're like most of our students and you're struggling, you're slowed, stalled, or just plain stuck, again, reach out to us. We'll have a conversation and see if you might be a good fit for our Fast Track Your Dissertation coaching program. You can reach out to us at dissertationdone.com/done. That's dissertationdone.com/done. And if by any chance you are done and you're out there in the professional space and you would like to really explode your brand and take your professional services to the next level, the best way to do that is by being a published author. So if your first name is Doctor and you literally wrote the book on your area of expertise, best thing you can possibly do for your brand. And you can find out more about how we help folks do that by going to dissertationdone.com/book. So again, Dr. Boyer, thank you so much for being here today and welcome.
Thank you.
So to start off with, I want to get into this interesting background and see how that led to a doctoral degree. So you mentioned firefighting. Tell us a little bit about that and what you learned from firefighting that actually paid off later on as you were pursuing your doctoral degree.
Sure. It was such an interesting journey to get into firefighting. And I actually got into it when I was in high school. I was in some of the pageants where I would actually be on top of the fire truck and I'd be waving in this long flowy dress. And I was just so impressed with all of these men and women who would just give up their time and risk their lives to help people in the community. I felt like it was such a sense of pride and something meaningful and impact that you could really have for the community. So as soon as I could, I think I was 16 when I started getting some of my training. I was 18 when I became a firefighter. And I learned so many lessons as a firefighter, but I think probably the most important one was when I was getting a call for my first fire. Okay. So, it's so exciting. You have to be 18 to finally have that official license. And you have to get to the fire quickly because it's an emergency. People are literally calling 911. There's an emergency. Something's on fire. You have to go. And so in the firehouse, you basically have your pants already set up with your boots inside so that you can just step into them and you can get everything on. And it's really heavy, all the gear. I was so nervous. I was running in. I accidentally put my foot in between the boot and the pants, so my foot's hanging out, my boot's falling out as I'm trying to get to the fire truck. I finally get into the truck, and by the time we get to the fire, I'm finally dressed with everything. And it's heavy. You have this huge oxygen tank on your back, and it's protected, right? You can't just.
Do they tell you exactly how much the whole gear weighs? Just the suit, the tank, the stuff you wear, not anything you carry, but the stuff you wear. How much is that?
With the tank, I don't know. I mean, it's been a long time. I want to say maybe it was 70 pounds. like for everything.
Yeah.
I don't
And
know.
maybe
I'd
it's
have to
gotten
fact
better
check
since
that.
then, but I'm a pretty big guy, and 70 pounds, just extra weight to be carrying around, is no joke.
It was a lot. And so,
Yeah.
we're going, and it was actually this farm we went to, and yeah, I had everything on. I put my oxygen on before we even got to the fire. I'm trying to climb over a fence. I'm dying. By the time we get there, we get another call. There's another fire. This is a structure fire. So we had to leave the farm fire, go to the structure fire. I still had the oxygen. I'm taking the oxygen off. I'm going in. I get into this next fire. This is a real one, like real. We heard that there was a 6-month-old that was left in this burning house. And so we're going in. I'm terrified because I'm going into this burning building, and I end up getting isolated. And my rebreather was going off. I had this little chime, boop, boop. I had like 5 minutes left of oxygen.
Oh my
And so I'm starting to panic, and I can't seem to find my way out. I just feel a wall after a wall. I'm just trapped in the space. And so I really had to take a moment and just calm myself down, because if you're breathing too heavy, you're going to use up the rest of the oxygen. I had to stay calm, and I had to remember my training. I had to remember the process that we learned, right? And you put your right hand on the wall and you're crawling around until you find the opening to get out. And it's that process I learned at such a young age. Is the process is so important. If you panic, it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't save your life, right? It doesn't get you through the situation.
Right.
You have to follow your process. And so eventually I did. I put my right hand on the wall, and I forgot to mention, I was so panicked in there because I thought I found this 6-month-old baby. And I see this, I'm disoriented. You can't see anything. You can't really hear anything except for the beeping noise, and you can hear yourself breathing. You can't feel very well because of your gloves that are on, right? And so you kind of lose all your senses. I'm trying to get out of this place. Finally, I'm able to do that and get out. And luckily we realized it was the family cat, because it was charred up. But I mean, really just such an emotionally charged time. But a time when I realized the lesson that I would take forever, that you have to stay calm. You can't rely on someone else to come rescue you. You have to follow that process, the process that works, that you were trained on.
Right. How long had you been doing this when this particular event happened?
Well, I was involved for 2 years, and I was going on the ambulance and, first responder, but this was my first actual real fire outside of our training and certification.
Wow. And to be able to do that, I mean, what was the training like before that? Because you hear all the time about people in war and things like that, where the training just breaks down immediately on the very first, kind of live fire event. And this for you was literally a live fire event.
It literally was. I mean, we had a lot of training in the classroom, and we had to pass exams, but then we also went into burning buildings, and we went into different situations. We simulated it. I mean, you were in your gear and everything. And there were fires in the simulation houses. So we had great training. And, I think I was just so terrified because I thought I found a baby that was burned. And it just, it shocked me out of my training.
Now, was there, you said that, so this was the cat that you found was dead at that point.
Right. Yes. The stomach thing.
That would be very traumatic. But
and it was, it was about the same size as what I thought maybe a baby would be, and you can't really see much. There's smoke everywhere, and I could kind of feel it. So it was, but a good lesson is make sure you clean your house up, right? Nobody keep your house clean so people don't get trapped in it if you have a fire.
Yeah, very smart, right? Because you don't want to when you can't see. Gosh, so I like to barbecue and do smoke meats and stuff like that outside. And I had the smoker going, and it was all full, and I'm ready to put the food on. And this particular thing, there was a lot of different little items I had to put on. And man, I was able to turn away and take a breath and cough and stuff like that. But that smoke hitting you in the face is severe. I mean, it is really, really traumatizing. And I cannot imagine what it would be like if you couldn't just turn away and get a breath of fresh air, because it's everywhere. Yeah, so making sure that you guys are prepared and have your little plans together. This isn't where I meant for this to go today, but it is an important thing to make sure that you have those plans together. And I always like to be able to walk around my house in the dark. And if you had a fire, that's essentially what you would be doing. So you need to be able to know where stuff is and be able to get from one place to another without the help of artificial light. So, but this process thing, how did that help you later on? Because I know you were telling me with regard to your doctoral degree that that this came in handy, your firefighter training, basically in later years.
It sure did. Anytime I'm in a situation where I just feel completely overwhelmed, like in a dissertation, right? You have this dissertation and you think, how am I going to come up with an idea that's great, get this published, get something that's going to get approved? And you're kind of on your own. You have a committee, but you have to come up with it. You have to explore it. You have to find all the research, and you're in this like love-hate relationship. You're like, yes, I think I found it. And then you're like, oh, this is the worst idea ever. And then you like it. And by the time you're done, you're just like, I definitely don't like this. I don't even want to publish it anymore. But you've got to get it done. And
Yeah.
so there's times where you're like, oh my gosh, this is so much. I feel overwhelmed. Then you have to come back to that process and think about, what do I have to do? What is the process for completing the research? What are the elements that I need to put in this? What is my end goal for this? When do I want to graduate? And if I want to graduate at this date in May, what do I have to do? What are the different steps? Who are the people on the committee that I can rely on? And what has to be accomplished? How much needs to go into that? So following that process and setting many goals to get you there is going to be so much more effective than just looking at a blank screen and feeling like I'm never going to become a doctor because I can't put words on paper. So just thinking about, what is this whole process? What is the end goal? Working backwards from there. And then every day doing a little bit more to reach that daily goal, which is your weekly goal, which is your monthly goal, which is a semester goal, eventually leading to a done dissertation, which is the best kind. And it doesn't have to be perfect.
So there's one thing I heard you say in there that I absolutely loved, and that was, you kind of glossed over a little bit, but it's really, really important. And that is, what is the end goal? You mentioned that for some people, and it's not just getting your dissertation done, by the way. That's not really the end goal. The end goal for this is what comes after you graduate. So for some people, they want to be a professor. And I know that's the path that you're on. And for those folks, if you're talking about a research institution where grant writing and pulling in those funds and doing research is an important part of being a professor, then your dissertation is vitally important. Like what you're writing your dissertation on is really, really important. But if you want it to go on to work in a teaching university, or if you want it to go on to do something in industry, hang out a shingle, all the other things that a lot of our students do, then the dissertation is not really important. It's the doctoral degree that's really important. And folks won't ask you a whole lot about your dissertation. If you were a counselor, a psychotherapist or something like that, I bet you that none of your patients ever ask you, what did you do your dissertation? Doesn't come up, doesn't happen. So you have to decide why are you pursuing your doctoral degree in the first place? What's that end goal? So that you can then figure out, start to strategize, what does this dissertation have to accomplish for me? And work back from there. But yeah, that my kids went to an elementary school where they featured, it was a magnet school, and their kind of pedagogy was all frameworked around Dr. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And number 2 is begin with the end in mind. And we use that with folks all the time. It's so very important to make sure that you know where you're going. Because if you don't know where you're going, You just might get there. and you won't like where you showed up. So very, very important. But
that's absolutely right. And at the end of the day, your committee is not going to let you get through with a bad dissertation. It's going to have to be good. Yep. It's just a matter of how much trauma you're going to put yourself through and getting to that point.
And that's one of the things that I also like to tell folks that are on this, what we call unconventional doctoral path. If you've done other things in your life before getting your doctoral degree, and you don't want to be a research professor, you want to do other things with the degree afterwards, then again, the dissertation ultimately won't matter. It is getting it done and getting the degree that matters. Mm-hmm. So this perfectionist gene that we all seem to have, it seems to be a requirement for getting into a doctoral degree program. It can also be a real impediment for getting out of a doctoral degree program. And so I tell students all the time, listen, you're not qualified to decide whether your dissertation is good enough or not. Let the folks on your doctoral committee who have done this before tell you if it's good enough. And if it's good enough, take the money and run. Like, don't say, no, it can be better. Yes, it can be better. And I'll tell you this, on your deathbed, your dissertation could still be better. It doesn't matter how many years you work on it. It can always be better. The point is
so true.
To put a bow on that at some point and move on to other things. You can always come back to it later on if you really want. If it's a problem that you're really passionate about, which I try to steer folks away from for this very reason. But if it is something that you really are interested in, you can come back to it later on. You can write books about it. You can do research projects. You can do all sorts of things. That's the nice thing about having a doctoral degree.
That's exactly right. And you know what? There isn't one thing that is published out there that couldn't be a little bit better.
Absolutely, 100%. Again, every time this idea comes up in mind, I look over at my dissertation on the shelf and I say, I know there's mistakes in that, but the perfectionist part of me is like, I'm not going to go look for them because then I'll be upset. But I'm okay knowing there are hypothetical mistakes in my dissertation. I'll gladly admit to that. But I'm not so strong yet to say, yeah, that comma wouldn't bother me. Because I thought I checked. I thought I got it. But that's the thing, is at some point you let it go and you move on to other things. And it's been sitting on my shelf now for several years, being dusted occasionally, but never touched. So that's, again, I do what I do, and my dissertation means, that's what it means at this point.
Sure.
Well, tell us about what led you from things like, firefighting. You mentioned some other things. Tell us about the path that led you to this doctoral degree program. What made you decide to go that route?
That's a really good question. I did do a lot of different things. I kind of dabbled in different areas to figure out what I wanted to do. And I always knew that I wanted to have enough that I wouldn't struggle. And I always knew I wanted to have a really good life with my family because my parents were involved in my life. And so I kind of dabbled in different things. And I remember one of the career paths I went in, I was looking at the divorce rate, and it was something like 98%.
Oh my God.
In that career profession. And so I said, you know what? No, I don't think this is for me. And when it came to firefighting, I loved it. And I loved being able to tell people like, hey, if you need me, call 911. Just joking. But it was so much fun to be able to feel like you made an impact and to go out into the community and help people. But then it was just really emotionally draining. And I realized I can't handle that heartache all the time, to see people die in front of me.
That's considered to be the number one most stressful job out there, isn't it? Firefighting?
That's a good question. I'd have to look into that.
But I remember hearing when people talk about most stressful whatevers, I seem to recall firefighting always seems to come up in that conversation. And so, it's got to be a very difficult thing to keep up with. The other one they talk about is air traffic controller. Because again, little blip on your screen is like 150, 200 lives.
Right. No, and it was amazing being able to go to places and knowing exactly what happened, right? If you're driving by some kind of accident and people are always looking because they want to see what's going on, you were there, you got to know the truth of what's really happening. Right. And so, and I love that. But for me and my emotional state, to see people dying on a regular basis and seeing their family and you're in their homes. It was just a lot. So I realized like that wasn't good for my mental health. I had to find something that was good. And when I was getting my MBA, I was working for a man named Marvin Carlins, and I was teaching his management classes, and his sections were like 450 students in a section, and he'd have two of them.
Oh
So
my,
he would come in and he would do his lecture
he has a
for about
really,
an hour. It was huge lecture hall.
I mean,
And
200 is a huge lecture hall. That is insane.
it was, and it was so scary because you go up onto the stage and you had to have your lapel mic and everything, and you're looking out, and it was scary. But he would come in and he would tell captivating stories, so interesting. And then there was another woman that was in there with me, a couple different women at different, but so there's two different people that would work at one time, and you would just be helping to teach the class. He would come in, he would do his lectures, and then the rest of the class, we were administering cases or we create the exams. And so I thought, oh my goodness, he can literally work if he wants 2 hours a week and make over six figures and have this amazing quality of life and a consulting business. And so I was like, I want to do that. That's the best. And I was looking and it's like, okay, divorce rate isn't nearly as high here, because that's what I always really cared about, is having this really great family. And so I saw that and I said, you know what, I think I want to do this. But my test scores were not the best. I had an injury, a back injury. When I was in college, I was a javelin thrower, and it came time to sit for the GMAT and try to take this and to get high enough scores. But I had a hard time sitting. I had a hard time concentrating. And so the first time I took the GMAT, I didn't even get a high enough score to get into the same college for my MBA, as I had a 4.0 in my undergraduate at USF. So I had to come in again and retake the test to get just the bare minimum, because I couldn't focus. I was on painkillers and I couldn't sit down. And eventually I trained myself to be able to sit for long periods, and now it's much better. But I mean, it was really a struggle just to get the bare minimum to get into the program.
Yeah, back issues are really tough because it's not like you can rest your back really, unless you're literally laid up for weeks at a time.
Right.
So, but one of the things I found in there that was really insightful is the fact that you checked divorce rates on a career option. Me personally, I made a decision a long time ago. I want to be able to be there for my kids, and I've got a whole lot of personal stuff that led up to that. But I wanted to be there, and so I have a job now that I created that allows me to work from home or anywhere else that I might want to. Generally speaking, to control my schedule. So if something comes in that's a family thing that goes into the calendar, well, I'm just busy, and my clients don't know that I'm busy with taking my son to baseball practice or swim practice or something, as opposed to helping another client. It's just like, nope, I'm busy at that time. And so that's something that's always been very important to me. But you're kind of taking it to another level of being able to say, oh, I looked up the actuarial statistics on this career path as well, which is awesome. I really think that's very insightful.
Well, you have time freedom, you have location freedom, right? And it's all about being able to give yourself options.
A dual-edged sword. You've got to be careful. So I'm still not at the point where I feel like I can walk away from things and they'll keep running without me, which is one of my goals right now. So the location freedom is a dual-edged sword, because I went and gave a symposium in Paris one day, which is one of these amazing things, like how the hell did this happen, right? But I literally had that moment of, the hotel room wasn't quite ready yet. They let me drop off my bags. And so I was sitting literally outside of the Notre Dame Cathedral. This was before the fire and everything, and checking emails. I was like, this is not my life. There's like no way. But that, like I said, so you can work from anywhere, but then again, you also sort of have to work from anywhere, in a sense that, when you go on vacation, you kind of bring work with you in your briefcase, and the whole office is right there in that bag you took with you. So you kind of keep check on things. So that's the part that I'm still working on myself, but it has been a lot of fun to be able to do things this way.
Right. I mean, if you're going to work, why not work outside of a cathedral in Paris or in Tortuga, right? Why
There's
not
worse
work
things
where
you
you
could do, right? But yeah, that was really one of those moments. Like I know that folks have talked about having these kind of stepping outside of their own selves moments after they graduated, and like, is this really my life? I mean, I grew up in a small town, little, literally one stoplight town when I was growing up. Didn't even have a high school in my town. We had to go to the next town over to go to high school. And then later in life, I was outside, checking emails outside of the Notre Dame Cathedral while preparing for my seminar that I'm giving in Paris. And I don't speak like more than, I think, parlez-vous English is about as much French as I know. And that's enough to get by in Paris, surprisingly. If you ask someone if they can speak English in French, they're generally nice enough to do that for you.
That's so true. It's so true. Just learn a little bit at least,
Yeah, that's the thing I think I came across when people, I always, before I went, people were saying, oh, people in Paris are so rude. No, I think it's kind of rude if you walk up to somebody and speak to them in a foreign language and expect them to talk back to you. And so, if someone comes to me in America and starts speaking German to me, I'll be like, dude, you're in America. What are you doing?
Right. No, right.
Anything over there. That's not rude. That's just like, why are you, learn 3 words, parlez-vous English. That's
sure. Exactly.
But anyway, what moment did you have like that? So you graduated, you got your doctoral degree, and all of a sudden you were in this moment, you were looking around like, I can't believe this is my life. This is not me doing this.
No, I mean, gosh, I've had a few of those moments for sure. Just even with our app that we have, just being called doctor, I never really thought, could this really be possible? Even my dad, when I was going into grad school, on his birthday, I showed him in his card, I put the acceptance letter that I got into the doctoral program, and that they were going to even pay me, and I would have a tuition waiver, right? And he fell on the floor. I mean, he was really exaggerating, but leading up to that, I was like, oh, I don't know if you want to do that, or just trying to really take the pressure off, because I don't think he thought I would get in. I didn't think I would get in. I just kind of kept asking, did I get in? How can I want to do the program. But, just being able to say, wow, I made it through, and your life is so much better once you get through. It's hard when you're going through the program. I mean, I was at a point where I wanted to quit every single day because it was so hard. I would stay up all night reading and rereading the articles, so I was ready in my seminars, and then I wouldn't remember anything because I stayed up all night reading them over and over.
When I was in grad school, so folks that have been listening to this for a while know, I actually went to 2 different doctoral programs because at the end of my first graduate stint, my thesis advisor died suddenly in a plane crash. So I wasn't quite the end of that stint, but then I had to make a decision. Do I want to sort of start over, or do I want to, I decided to move on and actually make a little money because I was in my mid-20s, and making like $13,000 a year at university was in Chicago is very difficult. So,
sure.
But I remember very, very clearly this problem set that they had given us. It was very, very difficult. And everybody in the class struggled with it. We put hours and hours and hours into it. And we all walked into class, and everybody's like, did you get number such and such? And everybody's like, no. So we walked in resigned that, okay, we're going to turn in these papers. We didn't, we failed, whatever. And he came back and said, well, if you guys need a little bit more time. And the entire class was like, no. Just tell us, man. There's only so much you can learn on your own. Sometimes being taught's okay. So, but I do remember that sort of thing of spending late nights and working really, really hard and still feeling like you're coming up short. And then, of course, the professor was like, oh, well, I found this to be really, really tough too, because there's a little bit in here that like I really struggle with. I'm like, dude, you've been doing this for 40 years. What do you mean you struggle with it? Why are you telling us to do this?
Right.
With it. But that at the school, that was their thing. It's like, we're trying to replace ourselves. Basically, we're world class, and we need you to be world class, or else, what's going to happen to the profession moving forward. So it was a very interesting time and place to be.
Exactly. And, I sit back now and I feel so fortunate that I got through it. And I had friends that would tell me, just get through today. And I'm like, no, I want to quit. Just give me some vodka and I'll drink it and forget about all of this, And they're like, just do me a favor, just another day. And it was like a year and a half of that, like just another day to finally get through. But I mean, what you get on the other side is truly amazing. And if I wouldn't have gone into this, I wouldn't have had a chance to design this application that we've created to help with sales training. And I mean, for that, truly, I kind of look back and I think, I can't believe that this is where we are. Because if you would have told me, 3 or 4 years ago, we would be creating an app or, this whole training and we would have thousands of people using our system every single semester, I would have just laughed to say.
It wasn't on the roadmap, right? It wasn't something conceivable at that time. That's one of the huge gifts that this doctoral degree gives, is a future that you can't fully plan for. You're preparing for it, but you're never really fully planning where you're going to go.
Exactly. And I wasn't seeking this out. And if you would have said, oh, you're going to create this video game, this simulation, I'm like, I don't really play video games. That maybe when I was a kid, I did.
Right.
But they found me because of my position and because of what I was doing.
Now, I want to talk about Rainmakers, but first, you said something else I thought was really good. Your friends kept telling you, just get through today. Yes. Tell me about those friends. What was that like?
Well, one of my friends, Nadine, she was getting her MBA with me. And she had always maybe considered to do her dissertation, but she had 2 small kids. And so she just kind of went on to her professional life, and she's doing amazing things. She does maybe want to go back and get her dissertation and finish that. But I had to have that support network. And I had some friends that were in the doctoral program, maybe in other areas, other disciplines, like in psychology. We had this training program, we had a cohort, and you would take classes in different areas and you get to meet some of the people that you were in different dissertation categories with different parts of the programs. And you just have to have that support network of people. And gosh, it was such a difficult time. It was such a struggle, but my friends really cared, and they knew that at the end of the day, it would be worth it. And I just had to kind of trick myself into one day at a time going in, and they'd say, how can we help you? Like, don't worry. They would listen. They would, call me to see how I was doing. And I kind of had this tribe of people that were trying to help me and cheer me on, that really wanted me to succeed. And that's so important to have that.
I hope everybody's listening to that, because that's exactly what I was hoping you were going to say when I was asking about your friends. It's so important. People undervalue that to a degree that I cannot fully articulate. They think if I just work hard enough, I can get this thing done. And you do need support. You need operational support. You talked about a process before. Well, the problem is nobody knows what the process is going into this thing. You've not done a dissertation before, unless you are a real oddball who has finished a dissertation and then gone back for another one. But so the process thing, you need help with that. But the emotional piece that you mentioned there, whatever it is that works for you it was one day at a time. For other people, it's going to be planning and really seeing what the long path is and marking off, milestones along the way. Whatever it is, have that support. Make sure you find folks around you who can, both help you operationally and emotionally. It's so, so important.
Exactly.
And make sure some of those folks know what they're talking about. The operational folks hopefully know what they're talking about. But even on the emotional side, I'm sure if you didn't have any other friends who were like, Stefanie, yeah, I'm going through this too, or, I'm sure you can do it. You're the one that inspires me. If you didn't hear that from some of the other folks in the doctoral degree program, the person who was out working after she got her MBA, she probably, those emotional support notes would have probably fallen on deaf ears eventually, because you're like, you don't really know what you're talking about. You're not in the shoes. But to find somebody else that is in your shoes that can also help you with that emotional support is also important. Not everybody has to have that, but at least somebody does.
It's so true. And my mom was one of my biggest supporters, and she would read my papers, even though I was like, I don't know if she's gonna really know what to do and how to fix it. But my aunt, she was an editor, And I mean, it was so meaningful to have other people who could look at my dissertation before I would send it to the committee and maybe embarrass myself because I had a grammatical error that I didn't see because I was too tired, or I had just been too close to it. So, if you don't have that editor of an ant, you've got to have somebody that can review your materials for you.
And hopefully you also have a nice committee that's not going to embarrass you because you missed a comma somewhere. That's what like form and style is for at the end of the process. That's one of the things that frustrates me to no end is committee members that will like review a paper and give you all the grammatical problems and not tell you anything about the structure and the content and that sort of thing. That's the heavy lifting for a committee member. They need to focus on those things for the most part. And yeah, we'll clean up the grammar eventually. But anyway, this was one of my little pet peeves. Tell us about now the transition. So you got your degree, these opportunities start rolling in, and you've mentioned Rainmakers a couple of times. Let folks know what that is and how that came about.
Sure. So when I started, I went on a whole bunch of different interviews all over the place. So you go to a central location and you interview. I think I had 26 interviews. Wow. Everything was scheduled out from like 7:30 in the morning until the evening. Even my lunch break, I would take, interviews during that. And I was just going. And I remember we were at a hotel in California and I was going from hotel to hotel room. I accidentally went to the wrong hotel room. And I was early and I interrupted someone else's meeting and it was just so frantic. And then after that, they start to invite you out. And
really the wrong hotel room. I mean, you could have walked in on anything.
Well, it was so awkward because you're at this place and, sometimes you have to sit on a bed and you're interviewing and you've got like this group of people around you and you're just like trying to tell them about your research. And it's just so awkward. Sometimes there was a boat that I got to interview on and there was just so many different places at a restaurant that was busy. Everybody had something different that they wanted, but I was very lucky because I was going to fill a sales position. That was my goal to do that. And as a woman, there's not many of us. So I got an opportunity to interview at a variety of schools. And I was lucky enough to get into Bryant University in Rhode Island, which at first I was like, oh, Rhode Island, what am I going to do there? I haven't even heard of Bryant. Yeah. And I didn't even want to take the actual interview to go out because I was in Florida. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what business do I have in Rhode Island? What is this place? Yeah. And so one of my committee members, he said, look, just take it as a practice interview and just do it. And I was like, oh, I'm wasting everybody's time. But then I went and I loved it. I fell in love with the students. I fell in love with the location, the people. The president came over to me during my interview and he welcomed me and I loved it. And I've been there, for 12 years now. Yeah. So it was really a good choice. So I would definitely say to anybody who's, thinking maybe something isn't right, just take the interview and see for yourself and try to organize that. So they hired me to create a sales program at the university. And I started out and I'm like, okay, how do I get people excited about sales? How do I get them to do role plays? Because if you do a role play for selling, then you have that practical skill. And you can't just tell someone this is how you sell. You have to give them experience trying to sell, trying to have that selling conversation. So we started doing competitions. And in the competitions at the university, I would bring the employers in that were hiring for sales and they would do role plays with the students. And it was kind of like The Voice. So the students were in the room with the buyer, the company representative, and there was a whole panel of judges that were all salespeople, sales managers, VPs of sales, some CEOs. We even had like a couple faculty members that would help out at times, and they would give the students all feedback. And so then all of a sudden my students were getting great jobs way before they graduated. And I was getting calls from students and faculty at other schools, and they'd say, oh, can we join your sales competition? Because I had it every single semester. And then I was like, oh, I don't know, this seems like a lot. And so then I think in 2012, we started it. We opened it up to other schools. And we still do it every November. We have a big competition that's open to other schools. And we get somewhere between like 20, 30 schools that join us every single year. And we bring about 400 people on campus to have this big event. And it got to the point where it's too big. You can't invite anybody else. There's a space capacity, especially now. And there is a limited amount of time and people that you could bring in. So that's when I was in touch with Scott Randall, who created these games. He created gamification in the 90s, in the early 90s. And he has a business simulation in the Smithsonian. So I was like, wow, this could be something really interesting. And he said, do you want to scale the competition? Do you want to scale your sales, training? And I said, wow, this would be really important, because I have 70 students in a semester and I assign them all these role plays. I don't have enough time to watch all the role plays. In the sales competition, we're getting more students that want to participate than we have room for. So if we have an opportunity to allow more people to participate, get motivated about sales, learn about sales, train and compete, that's great. And then the other element was, if you have AI that does the judging, then you get rid of any bias that we have. We all have some kind of unconscious bias there. So then I thought, wow, this could be a really big opportunity. But it's a hump to get over, because you're saying, okay, let's use technology to be a buyer. Let's use technology to be a judge. And so you're having now a role play, a conversation, a sales conversation like we would have, but instead of having it with a person with judges watching, you're having it with Alex, the AI robot that's going to listen, adapt, and respond. And then at the same time, he's also thinking about, like, how did you perform in each of these categories? So you have this whole sales process. And then he's saying, okay, what did you say? When did you say it? How did you say it? How well did you say it? And so you're getting all these scores based on this conversation you're having, and the AI doesn't miss something. So like, if I'm watching a conversation you're having, I'm taking a note about something, I just missed what else you were doing. So with that, now the AI is doing it. It's having conversations with students at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Friday night, at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. We're looking at the actual conversations, and we're thinking, what students are role playing with the bot at 1 a.m. on a Saturday? It's the students that are really go-getters. And so one of the things that we're really proud of is just the opportunity to get that practice, so that you have this sales assurance, right? You don't just train it. You don't just have someone subjectively evaluate whether you can sell or not. It's objective. And that the person can sell because they've actually applied it in a situation where they're nervous, where they're, competing against each other, talking to Alex.
That just sounds so amazing. So when you talked about the scaling, what was that process like for you guys to take your competition from something that you guys had control over, and you guys had your hands on, to moving it to the AI? How did that process work for you?
It was not easy, but I mean, we still have our in-person events. We still have this is just, the next level, because now we have, 70 plus schools that are able to participate in it. Thousands of people are able to compete every single semester. And the first semester that we did it, the night before it launched, Apple changed their policy and their code so that you could no longer go out to a website and then stay in the app. It would kick you out of the app. So we had to completely change everything. One of our programmers was in India, and they turned off the internet, like, for that whole part of the country. So he couldn't do. And then that was also when there was all these, like, California was on fire, and another one of our programmers was in California, and we were thinking, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? It was so stressful. It was so scary. And, we had all these people that were trusting us and believing in us, because as a faculty member, if your students are upset and they give you bad evaluations, then that can prevent you from getting a promotion, or from being able to, like, get your tenure, or, gives you a lot of pressure from maybe administration, especially if you're at, like, a balanced school or a more teaching type institution. So we were so nervous, and it was one of those things where it's kind of like your dissertation, where you got to get it out there. You can't wait till it's 100% perfect. And even if you think it is, you're going to have a surprise and realize that it's actually not.
Yeah, no, that's true. Getting it out there is important. And the roller coaster ride's got to be really something.
It is. And it's like we don't do advertising. We use social media to get the word out, and just word of mouth. So anybody whose students are focused on trying to communicate more effectively, and it doesn't matter, like you don't have to have a sales job. If you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, if you're a police officer, it doesn't matter what you go into, you need some selling skills. So anybody can use it, and it's 100% free for college students. So
Very cool.
anybody out there that has students, sign them up, and they can train and compete for free.
So how did they get to that? How would they sign up for Rainmakers?
Sure. So you just go to rnmkrs.org, and there's a link right there that says sign up as a player, as a student player. Or if you're a faculty coach and you want people to participate, then you just sign up as a coach. We will approve you, and then you can register your own students.
And so then you'll be able to kind of see what your students are doing. So in addition to them getting feedback from the AI, you can see what they're doing as well.
Exactly. You can see their learning improve over time, and you can see the depth of their performance when they're asking questions and when they're presenting value, all of these things.
That is so cool. That is awesome. Now, you did mention just a little bit ago about social media and how you guys are getting the word out on social media. You helped write the Little Black Book of social media. Tell us a little about that.
I did. It was such a fun process working on this book with my colleague, Charmaine Adaran. We were both hired at Bryant at the same time.
Okay.
And she's like my partner in crime. Every time people see us walking down the hallway together, like, oh gosh, what is going to happen now? This is going to be trouble. And so we had been helping people with their social, and they're constantly coming to us asking, how do we improve LinkedIn? So I have a stronger LinkedIn profile. She is like the queen of Instagram, and they're constantly coming to us. She runs our digital program of, how do I improve social? I have this business, I'm overwhelmed, I know I need to be online, but I have no idea how. Sometimes they try to get an intern to run their social, and it's like, what are you doing? You're getting a student that doesn't know anything about social to create your strategy and figure, like, you need to create your strategy or have some help doing that. So we were just getting inundated with questions about, how do we do this? And everybody wanted help. And even if we go help some people, we can't help all of them. So we thought, well, let's take what we do to share the advice, and let's package this in an easy step-by-step way that you can launch your brand, or you can, promote, or you can maintain, or you can grow your brand on any different outlet. So it's not just like, here's how to do Twitter right now, or TikTok, or whatever it is that you want to do, because all those algorithms change, things are changing constantly. But how can we present this strategy that's simple, that anybody can do it? So we just created this. We went in a room and we whiteboarded the whole thing, it's such a great process to use if you're doing your dissertation or writing an article or writing a book. And we luckily the whole room was a whiteboard. Yeah. And we wrote out step by step. If we were going to tell someone step by step what to do, no matter what outlet they were on, what would we say? And so we went from board to board to board, and we wrote out, and we're like, okay, this is 30 days. This is 30 days worth, or like 30 different steps. And so each chapter is only a few pages, and it tells you like what it is, why you need to do it, an example, and then it gives you a little assignment. And if you follow that, you'll see, on LinkedIn, your social selling index will improve, you'll gain followers. And it doesn't really matter the outlet that it is. You just have to decide, how am I going to position myself? What is that audience? What value am I bringing to the table? And then you have to think about your engagement strategy, because a lot of times we think like, oh, I'm just going to go promote myself and say all these things, but it's like one-way communication. But social media it's like a two-way street. So you can't just put the messages out. It's social media, right? So you have to it's social. You have to share. People are commenting. You have to comment back. If someone walked in the room and they're like, hi, and you just ignored them, they're going to stop saying hi. So it's like, you have to take a lot of the things that if we were face to face, we would still do the same things online. But people, they put this barrier and they think social media is just like, it's just an advertising campaign, but really it's so much more than that.
So obviously we couldn't talk about all 30 days right now, but what would your day one advice be to someone who feels like, okay, I need to start taking social media seriously, or I need to revamp what I've been doing on social? What's the day one advice for them?
Sure. So day one, we have the people really look at, what are the things that they value? What are their talents? And what is their experience? Because before they can go out and, have this campaign and a content calendar and an audience and all these things, they have to know what it is that they want their brand to be about. So they look at, what are the things that are really important to them, right? That value. What are the things that they're really good at, which is the talent, and what experience have they had? So like, what are they actually good at? If they put those all together in like that Venn diagram, I guess that sweet spot is in the middle, and that's what their brand is going to be about. And that's how you can have that authenticity, so that you're not something, you're not trying to be something that you're not. It all comes down to your core. So then everything that you do, the people that you find that are going to care about the message, your weekly schedule of how you're, putting your messages out, and everything that you do is based on the foundation of that first day of figuring out who you are, your position.
I love that, because that's one of the things that we talk to folks about when they're writing their books. So folks that want to expand their authority, we tell them, okay, you've got to get your message out there, and being a published author is a great way to do it. But one of the things that I tell them over and over again is you have to speak with your own kind of natural voice. Whoever you are, let that come through. Because, if you're usually kind of jeans, sneakers, and t-shirts, but for the book, you get all dressed up in like glam shot and all this kind of stuff, you're going to attract people who expect that. And then when you go to revert back to jeans, t-shirt, and sneakers, they're gonna be like, who's this? And this slob. And I can't, no judgments there. It's just going to be a mismatch in what you were putting out there and what you feel comfortable with. And there is a jeans, sneakers, and t-shirt crowd that you could serve. If that's who you are, put that out there and it's fine. The people who care about you being all glammed up, they're not going to come. And that's okay, because the people who you're meant to interact with and who you can connect with in the best way, they're going to come to you because you're showing them who you really are. That's a tough thing for a lot of people to get. Now, it's not saying you should put your worst foot forward, but at the same time,
that's great advice, because authenticity is so critical. And at some point, people will realize if you're not being authentic, and even if it's just you, and you're going to be so unhappy because you're going to say, like, what do people really like? They like this image of me that isn't actually me at all.
So very rarely people can come up with a persona that isn't them, and they like to play that on stage. And if that's you, then fine. But just understand that that's going to take up a lot of your life. And so, for most people, it's just a lot. It takes less energy. It's more comfortable. It's less stressful to just show up as you. And the people who like that and connect with that, they'll find you, because you're just putting that message out there. And it's, there's this term that people use, dog whistle, when they hear a certain thing, it causes them to respond. Well, you're going to be sending out this dog whistle to your particular tribe, and they'll hear it, even though you don't know exactly what you're saying. To attract them, they're just naturally going to gravitate towards you because of a connection that you guys have. So it's tough for some people to think that I'm good enough. And that's another thing that you got to get over, is that you are. Go out there and tell people who you are and help folks.
That's great advice.
Yeah. So if you were going to tell people at any stage along this doctoral journey, whether it's getting ready to get started or in the middle of the dissertation, or you've graduated and you're moving on with your postdoctoral life, one piece of advice, which stage would you point that piece of advice at? What would you tell them?
Gosh, that's a great question. I mean, during your dissertation, that's probably the toughest part of the whole program of getting through. And that's really that big hump that you have to get over, and everything else is, it's easier. It gets so much easier after that. And I would just say that, one day at a time, giving yourself goals, that break, whiteboarding, getting your tribe in place and your support. I know you're saying like, what's one piece of advice, but you really need all of those elements. But then that can carry you through. So even when you finally graduate, whatever you're working on, whether it's that publication or designing a new course or writing your book or whatever that next venture is, you can keep those same practices in place. Whiteboarding is never going to get old. Anytime you have an idea, like whiteboard that out and see. I mean, it's just such a great tool, and you got to have that support group throughout. That's the people that are experts that can help you and support you, and that plan. If you, like you said before, if you don't have that plan, if you don't know where you're going, you're probably going to get to that place, right? Exactly. So, those little keys that will carry you along. And I think they're just lessons that you can take throughout, no matter what stage you're in.
Yeah, I love it. So the whiteboarding I like too, but definitely figure out a way to kind of collect your ideas together and develop some sense of organization around those ideas, whatever that is for you. The team, like you said, I think that's so important. Just have some support structure around you. And, Dissertation Done does that sort of thing, but you don't need that necessarily. You can find friends, you can find family members, you can find colleagues that are going through something similar in the educational space. Find something that works for you. I think we work for the students that we work with, but that's not going to be everybody. And so it's very important to find that support wherever you can find it. And then, so what was it? It was teams, it was whiteboarding, and then knowing where you're going. It's important to have some sense of intentionality about what you're doing, because again, if you don't know where you're going, you might not like it when you get there. So.
Exactly. And you know what? And that whole knowing where you're going, managing your committee, managing their expectations, managing up, you can't just expect that people are going to always tell you what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and like be really concerned about your best interest. You have to come in and say, we're going to have our next meeting at, in 4 weeks. In 2 weeks, I'm going to send you all of these comments that you've given me. It'll give you 2 weeks to review it, and as soon as the meeting's over, you send them a message and say, here's what I heard in the meeting. This is what I'm going to work on. And then when you send out in 2 weeks the changes, you say, this is what I said I was going to do. Here's what I did. You have to just make it really easy for people to say yes, so that you have to manage up in that process, and your life is going to be so much easier.
100%. I love what you said there about all that. I will add to that, when you're choosing your committee, if you have any ability to do so, know what you want to get out of the dissertation process and get a committee member that's aligned with that. So if you just want to graduate as quickly as possible, again, they're going to keep the bar high enough that you're going to graduate. The university is not going to let them produce a coloring book and call it a dissertation. It's a dissertation. But have a committee that's okay with that, or that even appreciates that planning, because so many of them think that you have to create the best thing since sliced bread, and that's not necessary. So figure out what your committee's kind of biases are in that direction. If you want to graduate by a certain date, involve them in that process right away. What do I need to do to make this happen? And so they will start telling you, okay, here's the dates and here's the things you have to do, so that you're not confused that, hey, I finished this 3 months ahead of my deadline, and you're telling me it's going to take 6 months to do this last little bit that I thought wouldn't take any time at all. You don't want to have that conversation at the end. You want to know right from the beginning. So that whole idea of managing is important, but also to the extent that you can philosophically align with your committee, that's really helpful as well.
It is. And one other thing, I know we've been on for a while. Just what really helped me a lot was coming up with a little matrix to identify where I wanted to go. And like I said, I interviewed at so many different places. And so it was really important for me and my fiance at the time to go through and try to identify, what do we want? and it's really easy to get excited about maybe a big offer that you're going to get, but there's so much more to it than how much money you're going to make. It's like, how likely are you going to be able to make tenure and get the promotion so that you can stay there if that's something that you even want? And like, how close are you to an airport, or what's the crime rate, or how close are you to businesses or the things that you want to see? So being able to go through and rank everything and give it a weight of how important those things are to you, it actually really helped illuminate how great Bryant was going to be for us. Because initially, like I said, I was like, I don't know about this, but they had so many things that I actually wanted. So having a process that you can go to where it can help you to make those decisions and stay on track, it's so important.
And I will go back to just reiterating what you said earlier about investigate opportunities. You saw this interview and you're like, I don't know if I want to do that. And that turned out to be the right thing for you. I had a similar experience when I was in high school. What I would have considered to be like one of my safety schools, like I know I got that one in the bag, no problem. They had a scholarship program that you could go through. It was like an interview process, and it was a very difficult process. I was like, well, I'll just try this because maybe it'll be worth something to me, but I'm not going to school there. That's where I went as an undergrad, because that process and other things about getting to know the school better, I found it was like the right fit for me. And I got into some better schools, but that experience for me was really good. And it allowed me to do the graduate work that I wanted to do, because I knew that wasn't going to be my last school. I knew I was going to do other things. So very important to just, at least investigate opportunities when they're available to you. Because as a person with a doctoral degree, so many are going to come, and you don't know when you're going to have this moment. Like, we were talking about earlier, I'm sitting outside of a cathedral in Paris checking emails while getting ready to teach a seminar. That is not who I thought I was going to be growing up. And it's not like I do it every day, but it happened. And that's something I would never have expected. So.
Oh, that's so great. I love that story. Absolutely. Probably the best advice is just when that opportunity comes, be ready for it and just take it and see where you go. That's
right. Because that's the thing about that I've heard from so many people doing this podcast is, this thing I'm doing now, that is not exactly what I was planning to do. It's in the cone of things that I would have wanted to do, but I never thought this was a possibility. This is not an idea that I had. It's just where the path led, because I had a direction and a purpose, and then I had all these opportunities. And that's the wonderful thing about this degree.
Oh, it sure is. I love it. I feel so fortunate every day and grateful.
Well, Dr. Boyer, if folks wanted to reach out to you, I know we've already talked a little bit about Rainmakers. We're going to get your book in our show notes so they can go find that. I'm going to take a look at that myself. How can folks best reach out to you to continue this conversation?
Sure. You can find me easily on LinkedIn. Okay. That's probably the best way to reach out to me. But then you can also email me as well. So I'm SBOYER at Bryant, BRYANT.edu. Sometimes email goes to junk mail. I don't know, but I won't miss you on LinkedIn probably.
So LinkedIn is the easiest, but the email's there as well. And then it was Rainmakers. Did you say it was org?
.org. RNMKRS.org. Rainmakers without any vowels.
.org. That's so awesome. Thank you so much for being here. I want to remind folks that this episode has been brought to you by Dissertation Done. If you're working on your dissertation and you need that support structure that we've been talking about here today, reach out to us at dissertationdone.com/done, and we'll have a conversation and see if it might be a good fit. Same thing if you're looking to up-level your own authority after you graduated. If you're still working on your dissertation, get that done first. But if you're looking to up-level your authority and you want to be a published author, we can walk you through that process too. And you can find out about that at dissertationdone.com/book. And again, Dr. Boyer, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a thrill.
And for everyone else out there, have a wonderful day and go out and live your unconventional life.
This has been An Unconventional Life. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe now to keep getting inspirational stories of unconventional lives as soon as they're released. Until then, go out and live your best unconventional life.